So our next panel is going to be on the future of financial interoperability. So this will be moderated by Priya Darshinidhi from Carnegie, India. Priya, please.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everyone. I'm Priya. I'm an associate fellow in the Tech and Society program at Carnegie, India. We are a think tank based in New Delhi. I'm joined today by a stellar panel to discuss interoperability of financial systems. We have with us Dr. Ibrahim Stevens, who's the first Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sierra Leone. May I request you to come on stage, sir? Thank you so much. Mr. John Karamuka is the Director in charge of payment systems in the Rwandan National Bank. Our third panelist is Mr. Kwasi Sachivi, who's the Head of Digital Development Unit, Financial Inclusion Division at the Central Bank of the West African States. Welcome, thank you so much. And our fourth panelist is Mr. Selo Boshomane. He's the Payments Projects Coordinator at SADC Banking Association. Between them, they cover a large swath of Africa, so we're really incredibly fortunate to have them with us to share their experiences and perspectives. I also have exciting news for you. This is the last panel of the day, so there's very little standing between you and the gala dinner that Asan and Julia have planned for us. Welcome and thank you so much to my panelists for joining us today. If I could just start us off by asking each of you to perhaps spend a couple of minutes talking to us and sharing with us the context in which you have thought about or worked in interoperability of financial systems. Could I maybe start from the other end this time around, Deputy Governor Stevens?
Well, thank you very much. Delighted to be here. We have thought about interoperability in many respects, but we are currently going through a program of introducing a national switch for both bank accounts and mobile money. And when this becomes operational in a couple of months, you'd have 14 banks interconnected and 4 mobile money operators interconnected. But it's a huge project. It's not using DPGs. It is using a bespoke commercial software designed for this environment. So there's a slight difference there from what we're talking about here.
Right. Could I move on to you, Mr. Boshomane?
Thank you, and I'm also delighted to be part of the panel and also to be hosted here in a wonderful country of Rwanda. From the SADC region, we have embarked on a number of projects where we were enticing the concept of interoperability. And I must say it has been quite a journey, but the vision has always been that we want to come about a scheme where we will enable both banks and the non-banks to partake in a single scheme with one another. I mean, we've coming from a background where banks exclusively had their own schemes, which were not necessarily involving the non-banks. And the non-banks had their own scheme, but a situation where payments will terminate from a bank account to a wallet or from a wallet to a bank account whenever possible. So from that context, we, as the SADC regional bloc, we came about a solution that was enabling that vision. And for us, that is a true definition of interoperability, where all the players, whether it's a bank or a non-bank, are eligible players will be able to transact with one another openly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If I could just maybe ask a quick question there, could you expand a little bit on what you meant by eligible players?
Absolutely. So, and I had to just emphasize eligible because it's important that all players has to be endorsed by the regulator. They need to be approved. They need to undergo and meet all the criteria as set by the regulatory framework. And they need to have the appropriate license, whether it's domestic or cross-border. All these criteria has to be met before a player could be allowed into the scheme.
Thank you. Mr. Karamuka, could I move on to you next? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also, first of all, want to thank you very much for inviting us to share our experience on this very interesting topic of the day. I'm from the National Bank of Rwanda, which is the central bank here in Rwanda. So I have the privilege to have been in this domain at least for 15 years now. So I've been across the journey from where we started I can say in 2007 at the national level, regional level, but even now we are even discussing initiative at the continental level. I'm part of the task force, the AACB, which is the African Association for Central Bank, which is also thinking about working on a task force working on the integration of payment system across the continent to support the AFT protocol. So if I can say we've had various strategies which may be supported by three pillars, looking at the infrastructure, being physical and legal. How do we also support the adoption? People have been talking about inclusion here. So it's very important because adoption is a function of willingness in terms of, but also in terms of awareness, being a financial or digital literacy, but also capability in terms of cost and purchasing power. And the third is also the predecessors we are talking about trust. So what kind of infrastructure do we put processes to build the infrastructure? Because if, for example, the service are denied or there is a fraud, how can we help the customer to continue to trust the system? And finally, continue to support innovation, because whatever we are discussing, the achievement have been through innovation. So if I can say we've achieved a lot through this, if I don't want to talk about what we've had since a decade, having the RTGS and all the check being automated. But now we've thought about a new system, which is an inclusive instant payment under the name of RNDPS. I see my colleague here who've been working together, so he'll be speaking a bit later. So we thought because the system we had before the access was only limited to banks. Yet here in Rwanda, we have really big microfinance and the SACCO industry. So, and if you can see today, banks have a comparative advantage because they can access national payment systems compared to those other institutions that are excluded. So we are working on instant payment, but also which bring all financial, what we call payment account service providers. Wherever there is a payment account, be able to pay to each other without any hassle. So that said, we are giving access to e-money issuers, banks, microfinance, SACCOs, and on top of that, we also give a gateway for fintech. Because fintechs today, they are having, you see, for example, a fintech that wants to provide a service and access payment account, they must do bilateral arrangement with every bank. But through the switch, They can only plug and access all the accounts, and this will facilitate innovation going forward. But also at the same time, we are also bringing what you call payment certainty, because people want to be paid and they have control on their transaction. So when you look at the system we've had before, the RTGS, I can send you money. So you wait until you inform me that you've received the money. So you understand that there is a problem. So we are bringing other functionalities, being a beneficiary confirmation, what we call positive confirmation. Before I can debit my client, I must make sure that the money has arrived on the other side. So those are new functionalities that come to improve or enhance the capability of the current infrastructure we normally have. So that was at the national level. At the regional level, we've been working on what we call East African payment, which is a decentralized system connecting all the RTGS at the national level. So we are now thinking on having a IPSI2. So those who are have an idea of target 1 and target 2, so it's similar to that one. And at the continental level, on the regional level, I can also talk about COMESA system, which is REPS, where the central bank plays the correspondent bank to support the commercial banks. And the last, as I said, we've been working under this the task force I've talked before to see if you can have a continental platform, and we are working with some private sector, see if their system can conform to regulatory requirement.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Kwasi Sachivi. I'm come from Central Bank of West Africa. I stand for BCAO, Banque Centrale des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. This bank is a regional common central bank for East Africa. You have Benin, Burkina, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinée-Bissau, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and Togo. So to talk about, I am the head of Digital Development Unit in charge of regulation, elaboration of the policy of project also, and the license of e-money issue, and other topic about innovation. Last year, we have created an innovation office to talk with the fintech. So the journey of BCAO in interoperability, I think is a long journey. We start 20 years ago, yes. By now, our ecosystem is very closed loop, based on interbank system. You have RTGS, we have some NHS for processor check. We have also a card switch for only a bank. So we have, besides non-bank, so we have during the past year about 132 mobile money accounts. The mobile money account contributes very high to the financial inclusion. By the last year, the end of the 2021, we have a rate of 67% for financial accounts, and the contribution of mobile money is estimated to 15. So in our diagnostic, we say that we have many people who are excluded from financial sector, even more than 100 million mobile accounts. So the vision of central bank is to put in place a single payment system, interoperable instant payments for the regional level and for national level to use in the 8th country. So the purpose also is to include all non-bank, to include also the microfinancial institution who don't have access to the traditional system you have currently. So that is the purpose. I think we share the same context with my colleague from Rwanda and Sierra Leone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think a variety of perspectives there, the use of DPGs, no use of DPGs, you're all along different, you're at different points in the entire journey. The next question I had for you, and for each of you actually, is could you share with us what are some of the challenges in promoting interoperability? Are they technical, technological? Are they human? Are they both? And while you're also talking about challenges, perhaps you could also delve a little bit into what ought to be the research priorities for us going forward when we think about interoperability of financial systems. Perhaps I could start with you, Mr. Sachivi, and then move on to Mr. Boshimane, because you're dealing with multiple regions. So I think it'll be interesting to see how you're sort of working around these challenges within these regions.
Okay. Thank you. We have launched our project in 2017, so long time. So we have faced many challenges. Even COVID-19 was another factor who impact our roadmap. So the last year, our authority changed some orientation. The new orientation is to develop from scratch internally the solution. And second decision they have taken is to operate the system by central bank. That is the two pillars of the new vision we are conducting now. For the challenges, I think they are either human aspect and technological aspect. And I want to add a third one is, I think, strategic or political aspect. Because when you talk about interoperability, I think is the realm of financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is the way to enhance the social link in a country or some area. Is very important for our policy. So the interoperability is another kind of to enhance this social link, because I can transfer to you and receive to you. I can transfer to my parents, and even when you talk with West Africa, is a very large region. So the distance between some area is very long. So even in our context, we face terrorism, so they impact the movement of the people. So they adopt rapidly e-money to overcome some challenges. So the interoperability is a very critical in our agenda, central bank perspective, but also for our governments. So we have a pressure of our government to put in place this new system. For the human perspective, I think we have to to recruit a good staff, because it's a new skill, it's a new challenge, it's a new lesson. In human perspective also, we talk about the literacy of population is very important, because our region, they are not aware about how to use efficiently the new services. So that is the two aspects of human challenge. For technological, I think we talk this morning about security, we talk about the trust, we talk about the accessibility for the people. So when you design the architecture of interoperability, it's very important to take in account the need of the people and how they have behaved also. The complexity of our project is because we have 8 countries. Even you have the same, the common currency, same market, but the way people behave from one country to another country is not the same. The business model is not the same. So for the strategy or policy, it's very important to have a dialogue with private sector, with another authority in telecom, or also we talk about cybersecurity. So you have to be catalyst of all stakeholders to be success in this project.
That's very interesting. I'm curious to know, you sort of pull all the diversity together. Do you sort of put a common set of instructions or standards together, or how do you pull these diverse strands together?
We have a framework in our region for common regulation in financial sector that help central bank to govern or supervise this financial sector and to drive the activity or mission also. But with the evolution, we have to explain more our mandate. We have teenager, we have a new generation of people, we have a new generation of political. So we have to explain also every year, every period, our mandate is very important.
You have to build consensus.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's different for you. You also deal with multiple countries, multiple central banks, and a lot of other banking and non-banking institutions, Mr. Boshwane. Could you share with us what your experiences are in terms of the challenges and in terms of what we should be thinking about going forward as research priorities?
Yeah, absolutely, Priya. So I think the starting point should be that we need to have the ability to see the world logically and not necessarily physically, because the hindrance, upon interoperability is all these jurisdictions. You see, the banks will talk about we are regulated under the bank's policy, and that's the jurisdiction in which we operate. The mobile operators, they operate under the mobile operator policy, and that is their jurisdiction. At the country level, countries have all these jurisdictions. And with that in the picture, it's actually a hindrance to interoperability. So as a challenge, we are having all these fragmented policies that are making it difficult for all these players to play together. So the starting point, and I think this should be actually, investment of time and efforts into research work in terms of how we could potentially enhance and harmonize all these policies. It has to start at that level, because the policies are basically the platform and the foundation of us realizing interoperability. So if, as regulators, we don't get to sit in the table and say, look, yes, we do appreciate, we have all these policies that are in place, but at what point can we harmonize all these things in order for us to realize the vision of interoperability and ultimately of financial inclusion? And it has to start, conversation has to start at that level. And also, if you look at it at the country level, as blocks or as continental countries, a time has to come where we sit and we look at how could we potentially break all these barriers, because without us having those conversations at the policy level, we will continue having all these fragmented and silos and systems that are not talking to one another. And my next point in terms of challenge is the platforms. I mean, every day, day in, day night, technologists are working on systems, are developing all these platforms. But you look at them holistically, work keeps on carrying on and on you know, infrastructure that is not really talking to one another. And I think until we come to a point where we have, you know, working groups or task forces that are looking at how to integrate all these systems. And I think, you know, and I've heard from the previous presenters, opportunities are there where we could leverage from existing platforms. I think as, you know, market players, industry, regulators, we are investing a lot in all these different platforms. But the missing piece is, you know, looking at them holistically in terms of how could we leverage from one another, and how could we build interoperability from a holistic sense, rather than looking at it from all these different jurisdictions. And that's solely my take. I think, you know, to your question, it's the policies that we need to look into and the regulatory framework as number one. Number two is to look at all these different systems, because they are good systems, I mean, in different ways, but we need to bring them together. Thank you.
Deputy Governor Stevens, would you have anything, any perspective or any thoughts to share on the same question?
Yeah, absolutely. They've touched on some of the issues, but let me give some perspective, both from the point of view of those that have access and from the point of view that those that do not have access. So one of the biggest issues for those that have access is the cost. So for example, I can give you a very crude narrative. I have a bank issued in Sierra Leone, a bank card issued in Sierra Leone, I have a bank card issued in Europe. So I use my Sierra Leone card in Europe, I use my European card in Sierra Leone. Now, my Sierra Leone card is charged extortionately in Europe, my European card is charged extortionately in Sierra Leone. Why is that? Because the system in Sierra Leone is probably not very well linked to the system in Europe. The Sierra Leone bank may be switching in Nigeria or in India. The UK bank is switching in the UK. So we need to have interoperability across borders. And the best way to do that is first to have a national gateway, so everybody's switching locally, and then there's one gateway that goes internationally. And that's what we're trying to do in Sierra Leone. Second, you just need more financial sector development and more sort of European banks having correspondence with Sierra Leonean banks to help, you know, ease the uncertainties around this exercise. But think about the informal sector. Now, they don't have access. They're huge. In Sierra Leone, it's about 29% inclusion. I need to bring in 70% of the population. I need to provide incentives. So if I want to issue POSs, perhaps I could issue them at a huge discount or even give them free. QR registration, bank registration, make them free. So you need to provide incentives in order for you to create and enhance interoperability. So if you're thinking from a research standpoint, you could conduct big trials to see those that you provided incentive to against those that you didn't provide incentive to see what sort of outcomes you have. But the story about incentives in economics is closed. They work, taxation and other areas, they do work. So if you want to increase interoperability, you may want to see some of the things we're planning in Sierra Leone, for example, when the switch comes in, is that we'll go to the market and give free devices and encourage banks to go in and onboard, traders free of charge. I know there's the question that, oh, you've given them the technology, they still need to earn money, of course, but that's a different question. That's about creating work, about labor, about reducing poverty. It's a separate question, but the technology is fundamental. That's why I disagree with the notion that you don't just have to focus on technology. I think it's the linchpin, because if access is seamless, quite frankly, once you're able to find a job, once you're able to involve in productive activity, then the rest is straightforward, as we've seen in many, many places. I used to be a research economist, and as I was saying to you earlier, the question then changes when you're a policymaker. I have an objective. Financial inclusion 5 years ago was 20%. The latest Findex survey suggests 29%. Good, but not good enough, because I want to be 50% under 10 years. And I haven't cracked that yet. So I've got another 5 years to bring in percentage points terms, another 20% of the population. That means I need to create an environment where even if you don't have money, if you want to have access to finance, you could. And that's very important.
Technology may not be the only factor, but it is certainly a linchpin, is what, right? If I could move to you next.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think just to complete what my colleague said, when I look at the interoperability, I look at it as three aspects, and these are very important. There is technology, the technology aspect, how system platforms can communicate to each other, what kind of standards can be used, the content, how they are structured, etc. So that's technology. We also have the operational aspect, the governance, dispute management, etc. But also there is also another important part, which is about the business aspect. So be able to balance economic incentives across the value chain, being the platform provider, being participant, and end users. So when you look at every aspect, when you talk about challenge, by the way, I was referring to what kind of discussion do we have when implementing various projects. You find that it is not on the technology. So today, when we are talking about digital public good, and I assume that interoperability is also a public good. But how do you balance balancing the interoperability as a utility, but also taking into account the sustainability of the system on the other side? It is not something easy at all. So the pricing model, the incentives, it's really something very, very hard to agree on in the market. I've been challenging. If you see, for example, today, we have a very good system when it comes to card-based system. I'm talking about Visa and MasterCard. But they have failed here. And you'll see that it is not about the technology. It's about the economic incentives on this side. So that's very important. The governance, how do you ensure that you have inclusive governance? That's something I think we can still look at to ensure that we have an efficient system where all participants can have buy-in of the system and support the system itself. On the technology side, I know we've done a lot trying to improve the current system. But what we've seen, the current technology, I'm talking about the legacy one, you'll find that they have some inherent weaknesses, especially when it comes to cross-border payment. So today, for example, I just give you an example. We have what we call East African payment system, where all RTGS are linked across the East African countries. So a message can go, a payment can go through the first RTGS, but fail on the other side. So there is a lack of what we call atomicity in payment. And this is crucial to give a trust on cross-border payment. And we thought maybe doing research on new technologies, being based on crypto technologies, we can better integrate systems at the international level, being regional level, international level, and they be able to address such kind of issues. So that's why I see, let's look at those three aspects, and we see that we still have such challenges, even though we've done something, but some work, but we still have some issues. I want to just give you another example today, what we call DVP. When it comes to security settlement system, you see, you have the CSD here, or you have the payment system here. And you have to make sure that when a transaction has gone here, it must be seamless on the other side. But it's possible that the transaction can go through here, but fail on the other side. How do we use new technologies to address such kind of issues we are seeing in the current system? Thank you.
The research question that I'm going to go away with is the mystery of Jackie saying that technology is just a part of the answer, and the central banker saying that technology is the linchpin. So I thought we have maybe about 5 minutes or so, so I thought I could take a pause here and see if there are any audience questions or comments for our panelists. There's a hand up there.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to see that we have guys from central banks in South Africa, Southern Africa, East Africa, and West Africa. I have a question, and I'm curious because what you have been speaking about sounds to me, especially the last point that you have just made, like there's a lot of fragmentation even within the central bank systems. And I'm curious, right, because we have, or we just have, the Pan-African Payment Settlement System. And
PAPS, eh?
PAPS, yes, exactly. Right. So I'm curious. You just spoke about the East African payment system, and we have PAPS as well. So it does seem to me like we've not gotten the regional ones to work out. And I'm curious, right? If for someone like you guys, if you see PAPS, which is trying to be continental, unfortunately we don't have any North African there. But I'm curious if you will see that as also working out.
I think Sierra Leone is part of the piloting phase, so
Sure.
maybe.
No, I'm happy to talk about it. Look, PAPS is a very good initiative. We're part of it. The original idea for PAPS is to promote interregional trade. It's tested, it's up and running, but it has to be fully functional. I think your point is a very important point. I think essentially what you're saying is, at the regional level, we're still struggling. You're essentially saying we need more interoperability, so we need to be a bit more coherent in trying to bring all of this together. I think the idea for PAPS is good. We need to finally sort out the settlement arrangements. The central banks are going to be settling. You know, we used to have the West African Clearing House, which ended up with some negative balances between a few countries. And we don't want a repeat of that. Everything is in place. PAPS is, in theory, up and running, but we've got to make it functional. And Afrexim is doing a great job. But, you know, they are going to play the central clearing sort of role. And playing the central clearing role means that you need to have a wherewithal to ensure settlement at the end of the day. And that's what's being worked on. But I think it's a great idea. We are piloting, well, we are part of the test countries, and I'm keen to learn whether we are going to be fully operational before East Africa or not. But I think your general point is a good one. we need to, in the end, have much more coherence, across the board for this to work.
Yeah, sure.
If I can add something, because I'm part of the discussion on the task force. So what I can say on PAPS is really a very good system. When you can see it's mirrored to what we call SEPA, instant payment system. So it's similar to what has been built in Europe, but with only difference because in Europe it is a single currency. So yet here we have to work with multiple currencies. And the central bank now is playing a new role of being a liquidity bridge for the system. So it's something now central banks must work on and understand what kind of forex risks are there and how they can be mitigated, but also at the same time agree on the governance, the regulatory framework. But ultimately, it's one of the state-of-art systems. As I said, the technology is not really a big issue. Where we see issues are beyond on operation and the business side. But we think that we are discussing this under the AACB task force, and we think that all small issues will be sorted out and then work with PAPS going forward. But also we have other systems. By the way, we are not just talking about PAPS, we have other initiatives. I know under SADC they have, for example, what they call TCIB, which is another system. I know on the COMESA side also they are working on another similar platform. So we are not, we are working with various initiatives and see which one can really support and serve the continent. Thank you.
Maybe just a very quick comment.
Yeah,
from
just a quick one from my side is just to also embrace the fact that finally our central bank governors across the African continent have also realized the need to link up together all these regional blocks. So there is an initiative that is underway where the focus will be to look at how can SADC integrate with East Africa and East Africa with West Africa, because at the end of the day, as an African, at the continental level, we need to, all these regional blocks, including PAPS in the picture, we need to be able to speak to one another. So I just want to allude to that fact as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you also to our audience for tuning in. I hope you found this as insightful as I did. Thank you again. Over to you, Julia.